Hello, and welcome back to the Private Client Podcast. For those tuning in for the first time, my name's Charlie Shammy. I'm an independent financial advisor at Glams IFA and a co-founder of the Private Client Network, a networking group for any professional providing services to private individuals. Today, I'm delighted to be speaking to Richard Moxon, Private Client Director at Hayes Parsons Insurance Brokers. Richard has got over 20 years experience in the insurance sector, working at various firms, including Zurich, March, Aon, amongst others. Richard, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
No problem at all. Before we dive into the wonderful world of wealthy clients and their expensive toys, can you give us a bit of background on you, sort of how you got to where you are today and how your sort of career started?
Certainly, yeah. Thanks, Charlie, and thank you for starting with 20 years, because I'm afraid it's probably a few more than 20. But anyway, we'll stick with 20. I like your version. So yeah, it started. I came out from my A levels. I didn't want to go to university. I did it well enough that meant I could have gone, but it just didn't appeal to me at that point. I wanted to go to work. It was mainly, pardon the pun, but it was mainly driven by cars, because I thought going to work would get me a fast car that much sooner. And I decided I wanted to go to work. At that time, I fancied life as a futures trader, but there were no jobs at the time. So I thought, what else can I do? Started to think about financial services generally. And I was taking my parents to the airport and heard an advert on the radio for Churchill Insurance, kind of a direct insurer at that time, still relatively in their infancy, competing with Direct Line, advertising for staff in the claims department. And by the time I picked my parents up from that holiday, I'd got a job with Churchill,
That's
which was
a solid turnaround.
Yeah.
Was that a direct approach, or?
That was they went straight into their HR team. That was, they advertised on the radio, couple of interviews, and I was in, yeah, on a vast salary, as you can imagine. But we were at the time living in Weybridge in Surrey, and the office was in Bromley, so that was a fair old commute every day. But it was really good engine room. Really good engine room staff. It was kind of call center, claims department, and I moved within that business to become a claims negotiator, which was dealing with liability claims and total loss claims. Back in the days when total loss claims didn't have the kind of retail or the retail protection that they do now. There's a lot more regulation, and clients are a lot more protected. It was a pretty brutal process.
So sorry, just obvious question, total loss as in I've lost something.
Car, this was motor. Sorry, I should have clarified that. This was motor, and this was write-offs. And of course, what people think their car is worth and what the kind of books value it at are generally.
And cars were solid back then. You really had to put effort in to write them off.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's steady on. They weren't that old. We're not talking, Model T Fords. It's okay, but they were. Yeah, it was really good engine. My kind of career stayed within claims for a number of years. I moved from there to join Sun Alliance, Royal Sun Alliance, as part of what was then a joint venture with Chubb for the Masterpiece product, which is still run by Chubb today, and the brand I'm sure people in the private client space know. And that was my first move into the private client world. And dealing with some real high-profile people and some high-profile claims. I was quite heavily involved there at the big fire on Belle Isle, which is right in the middle of Windermere Lake, a house on the island that caught fire. It's a roundhouse, and that was fascinating to get involved with. That was everything that had to be brought to and from the property had to be brought across by boat. And the logistics were pretty challenging, but it was a vastly expensive claim, started by a microwave, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Jeez. So that was I think I did sort of 2 or 3 years doing that, but moved within Sun Alliance to their in-house loss adjusting team, which was general market, which was everything, and that's
What is
that's
loss? What's loss adjusting?
so you go out on behalf of the insurer when a claim is submitted to quantify, validate the claim. You're looking for, is the claim, firstly, it has a peril operator, does the policy operate? Is the claim presented appropriately? Is there any suggestion of fraud? And that thing. There is genuinely, to be fair to loss adjusting professionals, I should have probably started with kind of the client care piece, which is very important in the event of a flood or something like that. But that's a really important part of the claims process, and helps everybody, because of course it does sort of pick out the fraudulent and the dodgy claims, which then don't get paid. But that was right across the market, and a great engine room training. I still call on those experiences today as to why a policy operates the way it does, or why why certain covers are there. But having said that, I decided that I wanted to get back to the private client world. You only need to be chased out of a council estate once with a rather unhappy claimant and his multiple bull terriers to decide that that's not really what I want to do. But
I can't say I've had that so far.
Yeah, well, they're not in the world you frequent, but it focuses the mind. So I moved back into the private client world, but this was where I got into the really kind of sexy side of the private client world. I joined Zurich Private Clients as an appraiser. And I went on to run that team. And appraisers would go out on behalf of the insurer to inspect the risks that they insure, to look at them from a sum insured point of view, for the buildings, for the art, for the contents, for the security, safes, etc. And unfortunately, that meant going all over Europe, looking at amazing properties. And wow. It really was as bad as it sounds. It was phenomenal. Every other month I'd be in the south of France, I'd be in Spain, I'd be in Italy, I'd be all over the place, and it was a great time, and we were able to make the most of it. I made the most of it professionally, but also it was a great time where pre-kids, when my wife could come on the trip as well, as long as I bought an EasyJet flight, and we had we had some nice weekends off the back of it. But
yeah, that does sound good. But it must be hard as well, because a lot of it, I guess there's specialisms within that. If you're appraising art or other antiques, I suppose you need a lot of baseline knowledge to be able to do that, I guess.
Indeed, we would call on specialists where required. Certainly on the art side, the security was something you kind of pick up, really. The rebuild, we measure the property, and then we would refer to the rates that we calculated as a business being appropriate by region and by country and by finish, to make sure that in the event of a claim, they'd be correctly insured, and they'd then get a guarantee that they couldn't be underinsured, which was one of the benefits of a private client policy over the type of insurances that you can buy online.
And would these be UK-based clients with European properties and European assets, or would they be European clients?
So generally the former. There was an element of non-dom client as well, where they'd have properties in the UK and across Europe as well. But generally UK based with holiday homes, villas, that type of thing abroad, in some pretty special places. It was a job that in a sense, I was still quite early in my career, and I knew if I didn't push myself, I'd never leave it, because it was lovely. I used to run around in a convertible car, go to these amazing houses, and do a great job, and have a great job with meeting some fascinating people, absolutely fascinating people. But yeah, it was, and I went on to run that team. I was there for 5 or 6 years, really enjoyed it, yeah, I would endorse that as a role. It was certainly great for winding your friends up anyway. But
yeah,
so I'll carry on. So then from there, I joined Marsh, where I did did a decade at Marsh, that was kind of transformational for me from a career point of view. Joined as a senior account exec, and went on to run both the private client and estates business, and latterly their education business, which is the largest independent school insurer in the country, which was a kind of a bit of a step from private clients, but quite in the Venn diagram of clients, I guess quite a big overlay. Excuse me. And I gave a speech in Scholars Hall at Eton, which was a moment I won't forget, and something I didn't think I'd get to do, but that was quite something. But yeah, and obviously Marsh was back to the private client side, was a very big player in the private client space and had a lot of international clients from all over. So it was a great experience, and as I say, Marsh was very good to me. But I guess as lots of things changed there, and I left to try running a claims business for Aon, which I enjoyed. It was a bit of a poison chalice. It was quite difficult to get my head round, and quite dispersed really, and trying to get a uniform approach was very, very difficult. Anyway, around this time, former boss of mine who had actually brought me to Marsh introduced me to James Woolham, who is the owner and MD of Hayes Parsons. James wanted to grow private clients, and I really wanted to get back into private clients because it was my favourite space, and I missed it greatly because you don't drink as much champagne in other areas of the market.
Yeah, I bet.
So I thought
the school's budget's not stretched to
not as much, no.
Although I suppose it depends which schools.
Yeah, quite. Yeah, we did those ones as well. So, but it was time to get back to private clients, which I'd missed, and also the joy of a business such as Hayes Parsons is our ability to be nimble. You know, I agree things with James on a Monday morning, I can do them on a Monday afternoon. That is, you know, in the big machines, that just doesn't happen. So it's and also I'm close to clients, which at heart I'm a client guy, and in the big businesses, you spend all your life managing up, and it's all on latest spreadsheet numbers or whatever. And I can remember Marsh being questioned and quite seriously eyebrows raised when I said I wasn't making an internal monthly exec meeting, and they asked why, and I said, well, I'm going to see the Duke of so-and-so, he was genuinely a Duke, and massive client of ours. And it was well, why are you doing that when we've got our exec meeting?
Yeah.
I said, well, that's when the Duke has asked to see me, so that's when I thought I'd go.
These
people that pay us, and they think, well, okay, so, and that we don't waste our time on those sort of meetings. If there's a client that needs seeing, we go and see the client. So that's kind of a route into how I am where I am. Joined Hayes 3 years ago, became a director of the business just prior to Christmas, which was great. And we're growing hugely as a business across all lines. We are proudly independent. There's no PE in the business. It is in private ownership, and it really reflects in how we're able to serve our clients with a long-term strategy rather than a lot of these short-term strategies. And clients are coming to us, you know, for that and welcoming that because they feel that they've just become a number in wherever they've been before. So
it's really good. And I think you said to me once a little while ago that you guys step in when sort of what you can get online falls off. Which I guess the higher end, the higher value, the more specialist. That's when you guys really come into the fore and are able to add a lot of value.
Bang on, yeah. I think we can compete with some crossover in the online world, but it's harder, and it's really harder to differentiate the proposition. It's usually where there is an element of complexity, and it doesn't have to be vastly complex. It could be simply somebody's bought an expensive ring or an expensive watch,
Yeah.
and their online solution just can't function with that. So they need to come to an insurer who can give them that that specialist insurance, so they can enjoy the item and they can use it whenever they need to. And
What would be the
overly
flag?
concerned on the risk.
What would be the flags
Sorry.
from our point of view? So when sort of for any financial advisors or investment managers listening, or I guess solicitors as well, like what is it that we maybe should not look out for, but what would a client say that would really prompt us to say, actually, you should really look into sort of specialist insurance for that? Is it mentioning, I don't know, new engagements or particularly like retirement presents to themselves or
Yeah, a good question. I
cars,
think
watches, that kind of,
the first thing I would say is it'll be at a far lower point than people assume when you talk about private client insurance. People will always say, "Oh, I'm not wealthy enough for your services."
yeah,
Well, that's toffee, really. A nice family home is what we do, and we go beyond that. But nice family homes with things in them. So it's a 4 or 5 bedroom house. Is going to be great. £1 million upwards would be a guide in terms of property value.
that's useful.
That's the sort of that, obviously that flexes in by region, but that's where I would start it. The sort of things, if they're doing building works, then definitely they need to look at their insurances, because they'll probably almost certainly validate their insurance. If they've got art that they haven't valued, or jewelry that they haven't valued, they can be we can assist them through that process. They can have valuations and different types of valuations for whatever the purpose. Of course, you can get probate valuations, as I'm sure our family lawyers will talk about. But you can have auction values, or you can have full replacement value, which is where insurance tends to work. But it's about clients insuring it with their eyes open. The other one is, do they have a relationship with their broker in the same way as any of the professionals that are involved with PCN would advocate? It's about the closeness of their client. Do they hear from their broker? Have they reviewed things recently? Rebuild costs have gone hugely. You've seen huge increases in recent years. Watch values, jewelry values, everything. It can be quite easy for things to be out of whack. So have they had a review? And I think those really would be where we would be able to come in and offer that service. And they do deal direct with real people, with direct numbers and mobile phones, and no call center type environment. And there feels a real pushback or push against being treated like that from private clients.
It makes sense. I mean, that's something that people get frustrated with in kind of all areas, from banking and any area of finance or any area of life, from banking to like Sky contracts or something. It can be a quite painful process. And it is nice when you get an actual person at the end of the phone that can understand what you're saying and yeah, that goes smoothly.
And we're also, we do see ourselves rightly as advisors. And I know that seems an obvious comment, but to be an advisor, you have to be able to stand by your advice and kind of respectfully sometimes challenge some of the comments or views that clients might view, and doing that in a way that clearly you keep them on side. But there is a view sometimes that insurance, well, people don't really like insurance, or they see it as a necessary evil. And actually, when you sat where I have, particularly on the adjusting side, and you've seen people at their lowest ebb, and you're able to literally reinstate their life, you do see the value of what you do. See the value of what we do.
Must be really gratifying, that side of it.
Yeah, it is. Clients do appreciate it, and even very altogether clients, very strong clients, when they've got an issue, or when anyone feels that maybe their back's against the wall or whatever, they can be pretty challenging to deal with. And that's where you want to know that the policy you set up for them is going to deliver. And had one only recently. The client couldn't believe the speed that things were settled, and his renewal came around. He said, I'm not even questioning it. I just paid it. He said that's because that's what I pay for. And it is very important to say, and I say often, not all insurance is the same, and there is a difference. Even in the private client sector, there are firms that give different levels of claim service, and some will farm it out to third-party providers, some will keep it in-house, and you can work out pretty quickly which ones deliver the greatest service to clients. And there are a couple who we don't deal with because of historic claims issues, and that was the end of the relationship as far as we were concerned. So we monitor. We've got an in-house claims team who are great, really tenacious on clients' behalf. And that again is something that isn't necessarily always seen as something the broker needs to do. We believe in that because we are, back to my point about maintaining and developing long-term client relationships.
So how does that work then? How many insurers do you work with?
How many insurers? Across private clients, I would say in total 15 to 20, something like that. That's a lot. It is a lot. It's shrunk. And possibly we'll come on to the market itself in a moment. But we've seen 4 or 5 businesses exit this year, and that firms exiting is not that unusual. But what's different is no one's coming in.
Is that exits though? I mean, I guess an exit through insolvency or an exit through a purchase is quite different. Are they being bought up? Is there consolidation happening?
No, it's not. Generally, they were managing general agencies, so taking insurer capacity and running their own business with that insurer capacity, and they hadn't been performing well enough for insurers with that capacity, and so the insurer took the capacity off them. And that's knocking on, I think, certainly 5 cases of that. And what that's meant is all of those had to find a home. And there was sometimes a little bit of, I wouldn't say they were distressed risks, but they had an element of challenge about them. And the other markets didn't want them. So the prices went up. And then generally right across all of the pricing, because those cheaper businesses are no longer there, insurers have increased their rates. Claims costs have gone up as well, which is also causing to increase their rates. And they're saying, we don't care what they paid last year. This is the premium. But what's different to previous times is that no businesses are coming in, no capacity is coming in to keep prices down. You used to have new entrants, as with any commercial situation, new entrants in to grow market share would keep prices down, and that's not happening. And that's why rates in the private client space, the rates are going up. We rebroke absolutely everything because we can't credibly hand a client a renewal with an X% increase, which is far and above what they were expecting, without saying, we know we've been everywhere, that is the price. And it always used to be, it wouldn't be right to rebroke every year, because the general view is you should gain some history with an insurer for a period, and that will be reflected in your rate. But that's not what we're seeing. So we're having to work really hard on all of our renewals to make sure that we get absolutely the best deal, because it's not how the market used to be. It's challenging for sure. And you've seen there was an episode of Martin Lewis's program a couple of weeks ago, and they had a representative from the ABI kind of took, and this is the same in the standard market. This is the same in the private client market, but it's on steroids in the private client market. Roughly £1.20 is being paid out by insurers on home insurance for every pound they're taking premium. Clearly, that's not their only means of revenue, but that's fundamentally the problem. So yeah, it's the toughest market I've known in the what you kindly refer to as 20-year career that I've had. So
is that sort of linked to the spike in inflation for the last few years, which has kind of hit everything from, everyone I know who wants to get an extension or a new motor insurance or something, like everyone's noticed it in every area of their life. Energy costs, famously energy costs permeate into everything, whether it's the production of goods, the transportation of goods, um, the heat and lighting for buildings. It sort of really affects everything. Is it inflation related?
An element, yes. So certainly in motor, with parts prices for cars, for instance, and on buildings claims for the cost of tiles and bricks, etc., have gone up vastly. So yeah, that's relevant, but it is the profitability of insurers. The insurers will argue that rates have been too low for too long, and that this is now just a rebasing of where prices should be. And you do sometimes, excuse me, you do sometimes look at a premium and look at the exposure and think, cool, I'm not sure I'd take that risk. That's not a lot of premium for an awful lot of exposure. And I think there's just a bit of a correction there. The other thing we're seeing that I guess links to that is, I mean, by nature, underwriters are risk averse. That's why they do what they do. But they're becoming more risk averse. Anything that any of their requirements that they would need are coming in at an earlier threshold. So when you might need a safe, when you might need an alarm, when you might need a leak detection system, all of these type of things, they're lowering the thresholds of exposure by which that would come in, and that makes life harder for clients, because that's often an additional expense that they have to incur. So yeah, it's a tough market. I think it's really important more than ever to be close to our clients, and anybody listening to this through PCM will know that, because that's what we all do and we have to do. But in our space, that isn't generally how it's done. And I think if clients know you have a relationship with them, when you tell them that's you've been to the market and those are the best rates you can get, they believe you. And you obviously, we document it and explain it as well. But having that line of communication through clients, we try to get to see them, and welcome them to events and things, because it is a grudge purchase. They have to see the value in what we do, and that we're doing our best for them. And I proudly say that I take it don't take it for granted at all. But even in a really tough market, we're operating on a really impressive retention rate, and are really unaffected by market condition. And I'm not tempting fate. That's up until the 19th of June 2024. I'm making that comment, but that's kind of where that's hopefully a testament to what we're doing to hold clients' hands through this difficult time.
Well, it kind of, in some ways, I'm not too surprised. But I mean, if you're particularly on the sort of slightly wealthier private client end, these are people that understand that holding an assets, they're also holding a risk, and insurance provides a vehicle, a mechanism to offload the risk of holding those higher value items and assets. So it's not surprised that the sort of elasticity of demand, if I can go back to my economics A level, that it is a little sticky, and actually people aren't cancelling. I'd be more surprised if people were cancelling insurance policies, just because then you just take on the risk of whatever it is you're protecting.
Indeed. So they're not, I'm pleased to say, but what has changed in the market, again, making this study, because often I've found over the years that I've had clients for whom insurance really is a catastrophe cover. They're only really they're not worried about a laptop, but they are worried about a fire or a major escape of water or something big happening, or heaven forbid, a mugging or aggravated burglary, that type of situation, where they really have a big exposure. And how you used to compensate that would be say, well, okay, let's run a big excess, so you can self-insure to a guaranteed level, say 5-10 grand, whatever, and then insurance kicks in above that, and that used to have a real positive impact on your premium. That has pretty much eroded now. And insurers are quite restrictive on how much they can carry, maybe 5,000 self-insurance, and then the client then gets to cover on a higher amount, But what we're seeing now is there's very little discount for taking an excess of any level, which makes that slightly harder. So clients have to accept they're pretty much buying ground up cover,
Yeah.
which in the space I do think that's a shame, but that will be to do with the fact insurers will say that their claims experience is no better. And if they're going to get a claim, it's a big one anyway. So that doesn't really help. So that's why that discount was gone. But for a long time, that's how you would manage certainly ultra high net worth clients.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it makes sense. If I can ask a slightly more frivolous question. So over the years, or maybe some of those trips you were talking about, what were the more, I don't know, fun things that you had to appraise or look at or value or inspect? Like,
Wow. Okay. I think it's, I mean, the one that kind of stands out for me was when I was adjusting, sitting with a client who was claiming for the theft of white goods, so dishwasher, freezer, this type of thing. I asked him when the loss occurred. He said between the 7th of March, whatever year, and the June of the following year. I said, can't you be more precise? He said, no, I was in prison.
oh,
And I
right.
said,
And
and I
here was
said,
me thinking you were going to tell me about a sports car or
yeah,
a
yeah.
sailing vessel of some sort.
There's some nicer ones, but this was just the one that stands out. And he just said,
yeah, that definitely would stand out. I
it
don't know
stood
what I
out.
would say to that.
And I okay, and because you have to, I said, can I ask the nature of the offence? And he said, it was the manslaughter of my wife.
Oh my
And
God.
it happened to
Oh
have
my
taken place in the
gosh.
room we were sat in. And I actually wrote on my file, just in case I would forget it, I wrote manslaughter of wife, in case there was any chance that day would ever, ever pass me by. But on a sort of
Jeez.
slightly lighter note, I remember going to see a client in Docklands, and they were new at the time. He got a Ferrari Enzo,
Very nice.
and he took me out in this Ferrari Enzo around all of the tunnels in sort of Docklands, and that was awesome. A V12 Ferrari through a tunnel. Amazing experience, and it was a fascinating character.
I think it was the
Unfortunately,
Enzo, the Ferrari that you could only buy if you already owned a Ferrari, I think.
it was probably the first, I think,
Yeah.
where that came in for sure. Unfortunately, he was a bit of a made-of character and ran a Ponzi scheme, and I believe he's still in prison. But
Okay.
it was quite. I remember reading a couple of years later about this guy, quite an unusual name. Oh, yeah, I went out in his Ferrari. Yeah, so yeah, but I think I think my abiding memory of those times was just when I left Zurich to go to March, and I was working my notice, and I was with a client sat on a terrace just off the Croisette in Cannes, sipping a glass of rosé, thinking, I've just resigned from this job. What the hell am I doing? This is ridiculous.
Yeah, I could imagine having that moment.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I mean, so I think for me as a petrol head, it's the car collections, and my favourite memory was a client who had a property on the Thames and had a beautiful collection of Aston Martins, and became a really good friend, and invited me to join him on a rally in his DB6 and things like that. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, and the collection was sold off by Bonhams at Goodwood Festival of Speed about 3 or 4 years ago. And I went round the collection. I genuinely welled up going around the collection, because it was such a beautiful collection. It was a great character, and we got on very well. And seeing those cars all together was obviously a sad moment. But
Yeah, I
to have
could
been
imagine.
involved and to work with a client, and to have a relationship with a client like that that came purely from a business relationship was really nice. So yeah, it's a lovely sector, and I could probably bore you with more stories, but it's there's definitely, I always say, the reason I came running back to private clients, apart from the champagne, was that when you go to see them, they'll always have a built-in coffee machine, so you don't have to get served Nescafe anymore. So it's a great sector, and I really enjoy it. And certainly from getting involved with Bristol Private Client Networking and wider networking, it's been a really great part of our business, and adds a lot to it, and has had significant direct commercial value. So
That's I mean, it's great to hear and kind of you to say. So I appreciate it. So when do you guys connect with other private client professionals that are in sort of different spaces? Like, when does that happen, or how does that happen generally?
So that's a pretty critical part of our business. We are investing heavily in our online website optimization or search engine optimization side of our business. But the best area for us is referral from another trusted advisor. I think it's great for clients because they have that trust, and if someone they trust recommends them, that continues. And when we do see clients through that route, the conversion is really strong, and the client is the warm relationship to start with. And we work with from financial advisors, from lawyers, accountants, property buying agents. They sort of refer business in, bespoke property builders as well. Excuse me. And so that's a critical part. So when do we meet them? As often as we can, to be honest. We try to engage with them as much as possible, and to keep that engagement going. That's really important, because of course you can have one conversation, but a bit like private client networking, it's all about the follow up.
And how you've heard my speech on follow up.
But yeah, I may even have been saying it before, but but I completely agree with you. And I think what I always find fascinating when I look back on my diary, as I do, to just sort of keep on top of things. When I was last in touch with somebody, when you think you've last been in touch with them, it's a lot longer than you think.
Yeah, so, it's strange, that, isn't it? That's just how time flies. And
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, keep going with those relationships for sure. But yeah, so I would say we come away from networking events with certainly 3 or 4 contacts that we want to make and carry on with straight away after those meetings. So we're very active on that, and that's an important part of our business.
Right. I think I might have said this to you before. You guys are in quite a good space. So where our events draw primarily from financial advice, investment management, and law, those are the 3 major groups, which is really nice because there's other sectors, and insurance being one of them, where you often will have the room to yourself, which is sorry about that. But no, it's great. But it's great that it's actually, as you said, commercially materialized as a beneficial thing. Really good to hear, and really interesting to hear about your career and the sector, because it has got its glamorous side for sure. I wasn't quite sure about the other side, but it's important, right? Because you can't appreciate the sort of nicer, glamorous side if you haven't done some of the harder yards, like so many things in life.
Absolutely. Yeah. But a kiss a few frogs.
Exactly. Right. I've taken up enough of your time, but I just wanted to say thanks again for joining us. Very much appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you all at the next event. And thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me. And again, my thanks to you and Simon for all the hard work you put into private client networking.
Thanks, Richard.
Thanks. Cheers.